For over a century, scientists tried to preserve the human mind by moving it from one body to another. Now they're asking a different question. What if the head isn't required? A company called R3 Bio has proposed growing human bodies without brains. Not unconscious, but never conscious to begin with. At the same time, another company, Nectome, is working on preserving the brain itself, on the idea that one day our minds might live in the cloud. Meanwhile, more than 200 years ago, the author behind Dr. Frankenstein and his monster imagined zapping a body to life after a waking dream. What most people don't realize is that her story wasn't entirely fiction. One path removes the mind, the other abandons the body, and both lead to the same question. If you can separate them completely, which one is actually you? Join me as we unravel all this and much more and enter the Codex Legendarium. I'm Shelby Melanson. Welcome to part 2 of one of the most disturbing rabbit holes I've ever researched. Yeah, I know, I said this in part 1, I'm saying it again for emphasis. If you missed part 1, seriously, go back and watch it. You don't want to miss the backstory on any of this. We went back in time to the era of the Cold War, where a different, twisted kind of US-Soviet arms race was happening quietly. The race to transplant a head. It started back in 1908 with two-headed dogs brought to life, then saw a Soviet breakthrough in the 50s, all the way to when Dr. Robert White swapped a monkey's head for another in the 70s, in his quest to, believe it or not, save the soul. We also covered some modern attempts to take up that mantle, and a whole lot of philosophy. Trust me, if weird science is your thing, it's worth the watch. But this time around, we're zooming in on a group of scientists that are asking a much darker question. Instead of transplanting the head to save the brain, what if we removed the brain entirely? Enter a company called R3 Bio. Now, this billionaire biotech startup has an interesting specialty: regenerative medicine. That becomes relevant in a sec. And, well, they've been making headlines lately for what they've been working on, and the discoveries kind of keep unfolding. R3 Bio first started making headlines about a month ago on March 23rd, during an interview with Wired magazine. That's when R3 started talking about its revolutionary new idea, something called non-sentient organ sacs. Sounds gross, I know. But it doesn't really evoke the image of a person, does it? No, at least not until you read how they define these things. R3 describes organ sacs as, quote, structures that would contain all of the typical organs except a brain, rendering them unable to think or feel pain. Now, to me, that sounds a whole lot more like a complete human body, i.e. a person, just sans brain. Suddenly, the idea of using language to reduce these would-be creatures to just calling them organ sacs feels really wrong. But let's continue. The company is pitching these as a way to eliminate animal testing, basically as a complete replacement for lab animals, which also, by the way, is where the company gets its name. No more animal testing. Now, okay, that sounds a lot better, right? But there's more. The company's elevator pitch is this. The scientific community has long been dealing with the ethical issues and massive pushback from animal activists of testing drugs on animals, especially more intelligent ones like monkeys. Buying research animals to test medicines on is also super expensive, especially since China made exporting all non-human primates illegal in 2020, which is where the US sourced 60% of its lab monkeys. And now, experts say that if we were to face another COVID-like pandemic, we wouldn't have enough research monkeys for drug testing to fight it. So, what if R3 came in with its monkey organ sacs, replaced animal testing, eliminated the suffering of lab monkeys, made the activists happy, made the scientists who need organs to test stuff on happy? You get the idea. But here's where things start to take a turn. Naturally, the company's co-founders refuse to explain exactly how they plan to create these organ sacs, because, of course, though they did hint at doing this through gene editing and stem cell technology. A week later, on March 30th, things took a very, very dark turn. That's the day MIT Technology Review published an article saying, and I quote, "But there is more to the story, and R3 doesn't want that story told." Full disclosure, the magazine says that this info came from sources that witnessed closed-door presentations from R3. So use your own judgment and take all of this as you will. According to the magazine's investigation, one of R3's co-founders, quote, also pitched a startling, medically graphic, and ethically charged vision for what he's called brainless clones to serve the role of backup human bodies. I'm just going to quote the article a bit more since it paints a very, very vivid picture. Imagine it like this: a baby version of yourself with only enough of a brain structure to be alive in case you ever need a new kidney or liver. Or, alternatively, he has speculated, you might one day get your brain placed into a younger clone. That could be a way to gain a second lifespan through a still hypothetical procedure known as a body transplant. As if that weren't disturbing enough, the magazine also says that R3 was inspired by a medical condition and a birth defect called anencephaly. In children that have this, the majority of the brain never forms, meaning that the skull is mostly empty, and 95% of them pass away within a week of being born. But again, according to the magazine, there's still more. Scientifically speaking, artificial wombs don't exist yet. We just don't have the ability to make them work. So in order to create, i.e. birth, these literal brainless humans, a human woman would have to carry it to term, the old-fashioned way, as in surrogacy. Though, after the first round, apparently, the idea would be to have the brainless humans give birth to other brainless humans. As you'd expect, there has been a ton of back and forth since then about all this. R3 denies all of that and says it's categorically false. MIT says it has evidence from a variety of different sources, plus insider documents. I am not here to make accusations or say what's real or what isn't. If you want to look into it yourself, all the sources that I used are in the video description. What I am here to do is say, if this is true, hypothetically, this comes with an unimaginable amount of issues. For one, I think intentionally creating entities with a severe birth defect, or rather, inflicting birth defects on people intentionally, is going to be a bit of a hang-up for most people around the world. For two, how would this even work? To me, the way more likely path to doing this would basically be by taking the methods used to clone livestock. Yeah, by the way, that's a widespread thing that's been going on for a long time, since 2008 in the US, if you were unaware, and you've probably eaten cloned meat before. Anyway, taking that method and applying it to people and then just gene editing away the brain. Not to mention all the super troubling anecdotes from pet owners who swear up and down that the personalities and even memories of their cloned dogs, cats, and even horses transfer over from original to the clone. And let's not forget, even without the brain, the body stores memory and even trauma as well. So where would that leave our brainless clones then? Forced to inherit all of that? And then, say the head transplants we talked about in the last episode really do work. If you get one of them, is your head going to be glued onto a body that's packed full of memories of being a suffering bag of flesh? Is that a body that you'd want to live in? All of this is, of course, hypothetical, but think about it. And for 3, the Wired article talks about how R3 specifically cites forced organ harvesting in Africa and Asia as a reason why ethically sourced body parts are needed. Now, organ harvesting is very, very real, and it's especially rampant and state-backed in China, by the way. There's a link in the description all about that as well. But let me ask this. If human beings, at least at first, would be required to carry and give birth to these bodyoids, would that situation not also be ripe for crimes against humanity? Forced surrogacy is a thing too. Like, name me one human woman who would want to do this. To carry a child that would be born disabled and used for parts. Maybe that's just me, but as a woman, this screams Handmaid's Tale to me. And on top of all that, if it wasn't used for eliminating the need for organ donation, what would it be used for? Longevity medicine? Which would obviously be prohibitively expensive and only available to a select subset of people worldwide, by the way. The CEO of an investment firm backing R3 said this about the whole thing, quote, "We think replacement is probably better than repair when it comes to treating diseases or regulating the aging process in the human body." Okay, so the thought process behind growing these creatures is remove the brain, replace the body. But what if I told you a different company is trying to do the reverse? Just in case you haven't heard enough creepy biotech elevator pitches today, here's one more from a company called Nectome, as in connectome, or a complete wiring diagram of the brain. According to yet another article from MIT Tech Review, Nectome is pushing a new kind of technology it says can perfectly preserve brains in microscopic detail using a high-tech embalming process. And from there, the brain will get uploaded to, you guessed it, the cloud. To quote the article, the idea is that someday in the future, scientists will scan your bricked brain and turn it into a computer simulation. That way, someone a lot like you, though not exactly you, will smell the flowers again in a data server somewhere. But there is a catch. You see, the procedure is, and I quote here, 100% fatal. In order for it to work, Nectome has to pump a still living brain with a special scientific embalming fluid, while the user is under general anesthesia. The company's co-founder says, quote, "The user experience will be identical to physician-assisted suicide." In my opinion, even though this has become a mainstream thing now, I find it really terrible. Nectome paints brain uploads as a way to preserve the collective wisdom that's lost when a generation dies. Others describe the concept as promoting false hope, and for, frankly, being really arrogant to think this is even possible, let alone a good idea. Since, also, don't forget, we still have no idea what consciousness even is, or how to tell if something has it. Now, remember last episode where we made a couple of Frankenstein references and I said it wasn't just for dramatic effect? Well, fasten your seatbelts, because now that we know the history and the potential future, hopefully not, of all this, we're about to really go down the rabbit hole. I originally wanted to talk about this in part 1, all about head transplants, but the script was too long, and it also fits in here too. So, this is a pro tip. You know those intro sections in books that most people just skip over? Yeah, what we're about to talk about is probably the reason why you probably shouldn't. Now, you all probably already know the Frankenstein original story. Victor Frankenstein is obsessed with the secret of life. He stitches together and reanimates a living creature out of otherwise dead tissue. Right after, he's horrified by and petrified of what he created, so he runs away. The monster gains intelligence, sees it has been cast out by the world, and vows to get revenge, goes on to kill Victor's loved ones, and then vows to take its own life. What you probably don't know is how that story came to exist. Now, in her intro to the book, Mary Shelley herself says that she was often asked, quote, "how I, then a young girl, came to think of and to dilate upon so very hideous an idea." Valid question, right? Well, she goes on to talk about how in the summer of 1816, she went to Switzerland with her husband, Percy Shelley, and they became neighbors for a time with the English poet Lord Byron and his wife. The couple became friends and basically just hung out a lot. One day, Byron had the bright idea that each of them should write a ghost story to present to the others. Unfortunately for Mary, she had a really bad case of writer's block. Here's where the puzzle pieces start to fit together. She talks about how her husband often had long conversations with Byron, during which she was a, quote, "devout but nearly silent listener." One of those conversations zeroed in on some of the experiments done by an English doctor by the name of Erasmus Darwin, all about, you guessed it, reanimating organic matter. And that got her pondering. She writes, "Perhaps a corpse would be reanimated. Galvanism had given token of such things. Perhaps the component parts of a creature might be manufactured, brought together, and imbued with vital warmth." A quick note, the term galvanism she's referring to here describes an 18th century belief based on some experiments done by an Italian doctor named Luigi Galvani. Basically, he noticed how the leg muscles of a dead frog would twitch and contract when an electrical current was run through the animal's spinal cord. He called it animal energy and interpreted the twitching as proof that there was an innate electrical force in living beings. Not entirely off base, but also not quite right, aka electricity equals life force. And he also interpreted that the same animal energy might be able to reanimate dead tissue. Back to Mary, she writes that it was past midnight when she went to bed the night of that conversation about galvanism between her husband and Byron. But when her head hit the pillow, quote, "I did not sleep, nor could I be said to think. My imagination unbidden, possessed and guided me, giving the successive images that arose in my mind with a vividness far beyond the usual bounds of reverie." It's worth noting that in a separate section, she also describes herself as often indulging in waking dreams, something she calls an even dearer pleasure than writing. Now, waking dreams go way past what most of us know as daydreaming and are a lot closer to something psychology might call hallucinogenic. As an avid daydreamer myself, just daydreaming, I can tell you that getting carried away with daydreams isn't a good thing. Anyways, Mary goes on to describe seeing the scene where Dr. Frankenstein brings the monster to life, a hideous phantasm of a man hooked up to some powerful engine. Here's the line that to me is at the core of it all. Quote, "Frightful it must be, for supremely frightful would be the effect of any human endeavor to mock the stupendous mechanism of the creator of the world." Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that sounds an awful lot like her saying that cobbling together chunks of dead tissue and then reanimating using some dark, twisted method would be rather blasphemous. That would mean that the original author of the original horror story about artificial life that predates even the earliest scientific attempts at the same thing says the idea is disrespectful to life and the source of life, i.e. the creator of the world. Maybe those working on the modern version of this might want to give that idea a good read-over. One other fun fact, Mary Shelley's father, William Godwin, had a really interesting relationship with this kind of reanimation science, which at the time would have been considered magic or necromancy. He wrote an entire book that claims to be trying to debunk supernatural beliefs, the occult, and even religious beliefs. But to the point that he was obsessed. He basically went to massive effort to hunt down and call out any and all alleged magicians, witches, wizards, and necromancers, as well as anyone else who believed in, well, anything of his day. Which is really, really ironic, because in an essay written at least 20 years before the book, it talked about how dead tissue and burial sites, aka graves, are conduits for knowledge and connection. Yeah, I'm not kidding. In the essay, he suggests that people who were morally great, so upstanding good people, should have their graves marked with wooden plaques in order to more effectively allow the public to, quote, commune with their, quote, ghosts. If you don't believe me, the full title of the original essay is A Proposal for Erecting Some Memorial of the Illustrious Dead in All Ages on the Spot Where Their Remains Have Been Interred. What's also interesting is that in that book we mentioned a second ago, he goes to the trouble of specifically explaining that the reason people who believe in the soul think necromancy is evil. He says it's because, quote, in this case, there is something blasphemous in the idea of intermeddling with the state of the dead. Interesting how the supposedly super anti-necromancy guy is also pretty much proposing that we should commune with the spirits of the dead, which is the literal definition of being a necromancer. Yeah. Was this book just trying to cover his tracks, or was there some serious projection happening? Also, a quick note, don't forget, this is Mary Shelley's father we're talking about, as in the father of the original author of Frankenstein. This is the person who was inspired to write Frankenstein, all about necromancy. Okay, that point made. In the preface to Frankenstein, Mary Shelley wrote, "The event on which this fiction is founded has been supposed as not of impossible occurrence." Meaning, in her view, it's not impossible that the story of Frankenstein could actually happen in real life. She continues to say that her readers shouldn't assume she has the remotest degree of serious faith to such an imagination. Yet, quote, "I have not considered myself as merely weaving a series of supernatural terrors." She also says the story is, quote, "exempt from the disadvantages of a mere tale of specters or enchantment. It was recommended by the novelty of the situations which it develops." I interpret this as her saying Frankenstein doesn't suffer from the same plot holes as a story that has no basis in reality whatsoever. It was inspired by real situations and, quote, "affords a point of view to the imagination for the delineating of human passions more comprehensive and commanding than any which the ordinary relations of existing events can yield." I know, that's a lot, but she's making the point that the story outlines a realistic depiction of human nature, and speculates about how human nature might act if given the ability to do what Dr. Frankenstein did in the book. And judging by what we've seen as science and experimentation progressed through the early 1900s and through the Cold War, and have now arrived at the point where companies are seriously considering head transplants and organ sacs and killing physical bodies to upload minds, I don't think she was that far off. Whether it's a transplanted head or a headless body, what exactly would these things be? Humans? Tools? Something entirely different? Is the brain the physical repository of the soul, like Dr. White said in part 1? Does that soul go with you when the brain is moved somewhere else? Or if not, what defines the self? Is it the brain or the body or the continuity of the two together, or none of the above? Back to the Soviet transplant race we talked about in part 1, the US is founded on "In God We Trust," while the Soviets believed in state-backed communist atheism. So was the real purpose of it all a battle between trying to save the soul and trying to disprove its existence? If the people doing this research today believe that your body can be replaced and your mind can be copied, then according to them, what exactly are you? But what do you think? Are we headed for a world where replacing the body and uploading the mind are just normal parts of life? What do you make of Mary Shelley's dream and her father's obsession? And in this day and age, what does it really mean to be human? I would love to hear your thoughts about this in the comments. We've been having some great conversations down there. I love it. And if you have an idea for something you'd like to see a future episode on, let me know. And of course, if you enjoyed this deep dive into mysteries, myths, culture, and science, please take a second to like and share this video, and also hit the hype button, whatever that does. And if you want to see more, subscribe. It really helps get the word out there about the show. Until next time, stay curious and stay legendary. Thank you.